Yeah. You ready to go live?
Go live. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to the first of our solar workshop series that the Belfast Library has collaborated with ReVision Energy to bring to the Belfast Library. Tonight, our program is Solar 101, and from ReVision Energy tonight, we have Matt Schultz, and
Hello.
he's going to give us the Solar 101, and I'm looking forward to it. So
All right.
take it away. Thank you.
Thank you for all coming down, and thank you to the library for hosting this. This is a much needed event, one of a few that we're going to have. There's a lot of questions out there about solar, a lot of myths on the internet, so happy for this opportunity to talk to you all. So we'll dive right in. I'm sure most of you have heard of ReVision Energy, but let's take this time to talk about who we are. We're a group that represents these values: be kind, be clear, be curious, be excellent, be responsible. These are our mission and our core. We just had our meeting earlier today, and these are the core values that we like to drive home and that we believe in. Supporting this kind of culture helps us bring the best level of quality to the work that we do. We've grown quite a bit in the past 20 years. You folks may have heard of us over many years. We are now up to 480 people, and we're a 100% employee-owned company. We're B Corp certified. To talk a little bit about that, a lot of folks may have not heard of what a B Corporation is, but that's Patagonia, if you've heard of them. They're a B Corp, or Tom's of Maine is a B Corp. And a B Corp is a group that is, passing certifications and showing that they are out for something other than profits. They have a commitment for social equality, social justice, fair opportunities, and environmental justice. So that matches right up with what we do for work. But it is not easy to become certified. You have to recertify often to become a B Corp. Patagonia, one of the most well-known for their B Corp status, has a score of 155, I believe. And so we're very proud of our 150 score. We actually started right here in Belfast, and I'll talk about our growth along with Belfast's growth and how that is intertwined. But we are now up to 7 locations. Our mission is to help New England, not just Belfast and Maine. To be successful in this industry, you have to continue to grow, and we have had wonderful growth and many projects, as you see. But at this point, I want to talk a little bit about myself and about Belfast. I grew up in Belfast. Many of you have probably seen me around before or seen my Prius on Main Street. I went to school here. I moved away for college and couldn't imagine living anywhere else. So I came back after college, and I love this town. How many residents or close residents of Belfast do we have here? Most of you, yeah. So maybe you know about the Green Store downtown. I have memories of going in there as a little kid when I was 6 or 8 and seeing the little turbines and solar panels all over the place and wondering about that technology. So our founder is Bill Behrens. He was a co-owner of the Green Store. And 20 years ago, or 20 years old now, he was selling solar out of the back of that shop. He was selling some solar panels and off-grid kits. That's where he started with the business, and he ended up leaving eventually the Green Store and started focusing on solar hot water and continuing to do off-grid solar installs, or at least offering the kits. And that was his sort of foot in the door of the industry. Then we got a shop out in Liberty and grew from there. But the industry started off doing solar and turbines. Many years ago, it wasn't clear if the future of residential renewables would be solar or wind. So we actually did some turbines back in the day. But turbines are moving parts, and that's maintenance and service. Solar is very little maintenance and very little service. There's no moving parts. So that has become the clear answer to residential renewable energy. I myself continued to work in this area. I was a banker before doing what I'm doing now. I worked for Camden National Bank, and about 12 years ago, I decided to install some off-grid solar myself on a family camp. And I self-taught how to install it and just did a real simple system and got it up and running, and was just so blown away by the technology. I had a moment on the top of the roof when everything was finally working and I was making clean, renewable energy where I actually didn't have any energy, completely off-grid. I just had a moment where I realized, wow, this stuff makes a lot of sense. Back then, it was, even 12 years ago, it was affordable, easy to install, and it's been flawless ever since. And I had a moment on the roof there where I realized I need to get out of banking and get into this industry somehow. Everybody needs this on their roof. It just makes so much sense. So it took a while for me to transition, but here I finally am. And very, very happy and proud to be working for ReVision. We do more than solar. We do heat pumps, we do batteries, we don't do off-grid anymore, but we do ground mounts, a lot of commercial roof work and roof mount work. But to talk a little bit more about that technology, this image shows us the solar household. So we have solar panels on the roof, feeding power into your electrical panel, which can heat the home with heat pumps. You can be charging your electric car and even doing on-site battery storage if you wish. Water heating as well with a heat pump water heater is very big today. And just about all of this has incentives from either the state or the Fed. We'll dive into that shortly. I want to take a step back at this point and talk a little bit more about Bill Barron's and the relationship with Belfast and Belfast's relationship with solar, because it's maybe some of you know about it already, but it's a really great story. So about 15 years ago, Belfast has a landfill out on the Poors Mill Road, edge of town, where you want a landfill. You don't want a landfill, really. That land is completely unusable. Terrible thing. Sin on nature is what I say. 15 years ago, we put a ground mount array on it. And this is a beautiful thing. Land that for a long time was seen as never usable as far as you look into the future. We have realized that the whole world has realized that you can put ground mount arrays on them and that can be a producer of power. So that was the town's first step into renewable energy. And 15 years ago, great project. It's a little hard to see if you drive down Poors Mill Road. And for you who don't know, that's in the direction of Morrill. If you go out that way, it's a little hard to see, but it's visible up there on the hill, or you can just look at satellite imagery. But that was the town's first project. Many years ago, our leadership realized that up here in Maine, things are more expensive than they should be, even in this beautiful coastal town. And we need to own our own power to make things more affordable for ourselves. So for a long time, the town has had goals to become solar powered and get some of this renewable energy, if anything, to save money. That was the town's first project. Since then, the public facilities got a new location out on Crocker, and they have a field over there. It's far back from the road, so you can't see it, but we did a ground mount array, I believe in 2018, at the new public facilities site there, ground mount array there. Just last year, we put an array on the sheriff's department in town, and we all know about the one on the fire department, but there are these other much larger arrays around town. So all of those arrays are sending power into our local grid. The town is virtually 100% solar powered. The town has around 80 meters, and they're just about all powered by solar energy. That's a huge achievement. I don't know how many towns across the country can say that. It's not enough, but that's an incredible achievement that our town has done. And ReVision is proud to be doing that work along with them. So incredible achievement. And you've seen, we last year put in EV chargers at the Hannaford, superchargers there, level 3s to quickly charge a full EV. We now have 2 city parking lots, Beaver Street and Front Street, that have EV chargers in them. Not level 3, they're level 2, to promote people coming to our town, plugging in their cars, and then walking to the downtown shops and promoting business down there. Great thing to see. So that is just an incredible change that our town has seen years ago, where it was smart to make. Waterfall Arts in town, that's a local community project we did. Unfortunately, you can't see that one. I mean, some people like that, not being able to see the power. But on the top of Waterfall Arts, that's an old school. It's now an arts center and community. There's other community events there, in the farmers market during the summer. On that flat roof, that is all filled with solar power. Perhaps over 100 panels up there. I'm not exactly sure, but another great project that we've done. While we're on that topic of Belfast, any quick questions about what the town has achieved? Because it's really impressive, and I'm very proud of this town and what they've done. Yes. What's that? I do not have those numbers memorized. If I did, you know, what do hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kilowatts or megawatts mean? It's a little hard to digest for a lot of people. So memorizing a lot of the numbers, I don't bother really. But what is meaningful to communicate, I feel, is that the town has around 80 meters, and it's virtually all powered by solar. So absolutely incredible. So to get into the technology of solar a little bit, how does the solar panel work? No moving parts, I mentioned that already, but essentially sunlight has photons in it. It hits a panel, which is a negatively charged substrate and a positively charged substrate sandwiched together, and it makes electricity. It was discovered a long time ago and developed by NASA to power satellites. Why power satellites with it? Well, it's virtually service and maintenance free. It's the only power that you can have up there that makes sense. So incredibly valuable to be making your own power with it. All power generation is typically lots of moving parts. You're typically boiling water, making steam, spinning turbines, using natural gas, a lot of maintenance, a lot of service. Solar, the key design behind solar is that it have no moving parts, so that you're essentially building it, setting it up, building it properly the first time with quality materials, and it's virtually service and maintenance free, so that you're not having to maintain it often. You're not having a crew constantly running it, checking on it, flipping switches. Set it up in a field or on a good rooftop, you're making power. To dive into that a little bit more, so solar panels on your roof are feeding power directly into your main electrical panel in the home, and everything in your home is receiving power from that. So sunlight's hitting your roof, power is being fed into your home, you're consuming that power that the sun's producing for you in the home first. You're not selling it right out to the grid and then they're giving it back to you. You're producing power, first using what you produce in the home. Only excess power is sent out through a meter and into the utility. It's essentially sold to the utility. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but the way you're essentially storing your power is by sending excess electricity into the utility, and they're giving you credits on your utility bill, and you're storing credits on your bill for use at night or during the winter when there's less hours of sunlight. So we'll dive into the incentives and regulations and a little more on how do these arrangements with the utility work. This is probably some of the most important topics of solar. A lot of people are getting solar today to avoid a terrible electricity bill. It's become rather unaffordable. A lot of people look at it like a mortgage payment now. I personally spend most of my time going into homes and talking to people about how they can reduce that bill. A lot of people that I see, average bills are $300. You're raising a family today, that's very expensive. Kids use a lot of electricity. See a lot of people with $400 electricity bills. It's become rather unmanageable. So thankfully, we have the Inflation Reduction Act signed into law. For 10 years, now 9, we have a 30% federal tax credit for folks who go solar. That is huge. A couple of details to mention about that. There's no dollar cap to it. It could be $5,000 for you, could be $20,000 for you. It's 30% of your solar project. Whatever money you're spending to buy panels, have service, have the labor done, wires, everything. So if you hire a solar group to do an installation, their total bill with you, you get a 30% federal tax credit on that. And a lot of people say, okay, that's gonna be a big chunk of change. My taxes are only $3,000 a year or $5,000 a year. How am I gonna take advantage of that? Well, you don't have to take advantage of it all in one year. It essentially rolls over if you don't use it up. You don't technically have to fill out a form or anything to do a rollover, but this money essentially creates a pool of credit for you to dip into annually until you use it up. A lot of people end up taking 3 years, 4 years of dipping into their solar tax credit until it's all used up. And then I have other folks that tell me, well, Matthew, I'm retired, I don't pay taxes, or I'm self-employed and I've worked things out so that I don't pay taxes, or my tax burden is very, very little because of the way I manage things financially. How is this gonna help me out? Well, some people change their finances in a way so that they create a tax burden, or say if you are retired and you take some funds out of retirement, which you wouldn't normally do because you would have to pay taxes on those, well, there's a 30% tax credit that can take care of you. So some folks will create that tax burden because they know they're going to be able to take advantage of the 30% federal tax credit. Or a lot of folks, I have a couple of people in town right now that are waiting to sell like the camp they have or this extra property that they have. They're going to wait to go solar in the same year that they sell the property so that they are creating a strategy for themselves where they are reducing their taxes that they're going to have to pay out of pocket. So I help a lot of people come up with that smart strategy. I'm not a tax advisor myself, so I recommend people talk to their tax advisor. But you learn the ins and outs, and it can be very beneficial for you. There's one other detail to mention, RECs. Nationwide, you are essentially rewarded for making clean energy. That's what renewable energy credits are. We won't dive into that too much, but it's one of my colleagues calls it sunny money. It's just a reward that everybody can get for making clean energy. We help you report that you're making X amount of electricity from solar, and you're rewarded for that, essentially. So that's the federal side, but what does Maine do for you? What does CMP do for you? What does it look like to go solar in Maine compared to other states or other utilities? Here in Maine, we're very, very lucky. We have some of the best regulations in the country. Since the 90s, the state has realized that things are more expensive up here in Maine than they should be. And it's because we're in the corner of the country. It takes a lot of money and work and labor and diesel to ship things up here. And historically, a lot has to be spent on electricity because natural gas power plants making power for our homes, perhaps 100 miles away, it's shipping that electricity across transmission lines. It's a huge loss to electricity when they move down an uninsulated line. Long story short, things are more expensive than they should be in Maine, especially electricity. So the state has been very, very pro-solar since the 90s. We have one-to-one net metering. Now, what does that mean? That means if you are producing power on your home and it's a sunny day, you're not using all the power you're producing, you send out a kilowatt to the grid, you export it because you're not consuming it at that moment. And when you need to pull it back, either that night or during the winter, you get it back at the full value of electricity. So one-to-one net metering. You send out a kilowatt, you get a full kilowatt back. And this covers the supply rate and the delivery rate. So not just the cost of electricity, but the delivery rate too. A lot of people assume, well, I'm just making a supply of electricity, so am I just going to get the supply rate portion of my bill, which is like 50%? Nope, you get the full value of electricity, supply and delivery. So it works very, very ideal. Not every state has one-to-one. If you've been following solar for a while, you're aware of other states where things have changed over time. Other states have 1-50, or believe it or not, California has 1-25. That essentially means they need to have 4 times as many solar panels as we do in Maine. So way out there, they're happy to just be covering 25% of their bill, 50% of their bill, where often here in Maine, we're covering 80 to 100% of your bill. I took a call yesterday from someone who was making more power than they needed, and they asked me what to do with their extra power. Well, they can share it with a local nonprofit. They can share it to their parents' meter or their grandchildren's meter. You can share your electricity that you make. CMP allows that. So good segue here into CMP. I say that they're pro-solar. ReVision Energy built their first solar farm. And a lot of people, when they hear that, they say, why would a utility company be pro-solar? Well, they're just a delivery man of electricity. So when there's more locally owned solar, more locally owned product being produced, they like that because they are also kind of on a leash with big oil, with natural gas power plants. And when your electricity bill goes up and you call CMP and complain, most of the reason the bill has inflated is because natural gas went up, but CMP catches the flack for that. And they don't like that. So they're pro-solar. The more locally owned, locally generated electricity, the better for them, the better for you, better for the state, for the town. When solar electricity is sort of sold to a grid or a substation, a town, what have you, it's sold at a much lower rate than what a natural gas power plant can sell electricity for, because that's based on the cost of a barrel of oil, which is up and down and up and down and keeps going up and up. You build solar, and the cost of the solar is that upfront cost to building it. So you're fixing costs instead of leaving them variable. State property tax exemption, I skipped over that a little bit there. So going back to Maine being pro-solar, there's a property tax exemption form. Some states put this in place already for you. When I help people go solar, we fill out the form for you and send it into your town, but towns will not be increasing taxes on you when they see that you got solar. It certainly makes the value of your home go up today. Everybody wants to get away from that big utility bill. And absolutely, the value of your home does go up when you get solar. And typically, if we didn't have this tax exemption, your home would be worth more and you'd be getting taxed more. So thankfully, the state many years ago was smart enough to put that tax exemption in place. And my last point about what's great about solar in Maine and working with CMP and feeding electricity into the grid, this net metering, these policies that allow us to export electricity into the grid and be connected to them, it's why you don't need a battery in your home. When people are first looking into solar and may not know anything about how it works, the first question they ask is, do I have to have some big battery in my house? What do I do when the sun goes down? What do I do if the sun goes behind the clouds? Do I no longer get power? How's that work? You don't need a battery. You're still connected to the grid. So if the sun does go down, you're getting electricity from the grid. But on a sunny day, you are significantly overproducing power. You're exporting into the grid. We have a lot of sunny days here in Maine. So this acts as your storage medium for electricity. Without the grid, if you did have batteries, if you had my off-grid system it's in operation right now up northern Maine in the middle of the woods, and it's dark up there, I have batteries up there. And when you're not connected into the grid and you have to put that electricity in storage, you would essentially need perhaps twice as many solar panels. So these policies with the state and with CMP makes solar more affordable. And then the next thing people typically ask me after going through all of that, well, Matthew, what if policy changes? These are laws and legislation, and it can all change. What if someone comes into power that doesn't like solar power? What if that happens? What if I make this investment and then someone wants to change the policies and rip the carpet out from underneath my feet? Well, that's been attempted a number of times in Maine. This story is all good news. Today, so much of Maine has invested in solar power that a lot of people are benefiting from it. And now big businesses are benefiting significantly from it. A homeowner might save $100,000 by going solar. A business saves millions of dollars by going solar. And a lot of businesses across Maine have gone solar. And towns like Belfast have gone solar. And they're saving millions of dollars. So if a politician comes along and says, I want to take these benefits away from you, well, that's political suicide. You don't want to lose that money or votes or the backing from corporations. And so we're very, very comfortable here in Maine. That's why everybody is going solar. We truly believe that we have so much installed already. It's less of a political topic today. That we as a company and people investing today are very secure in this. But what if something still happens? We have plenty of examples in other states where something still happens. They don't have a lot of solar built in some other states, or politicians find a way to do things that are unfavorable despite everybody not wanting it to happen. They still happen sometimes. So in those other states, the 1-to-1 net metering has stepped down to 1-to-50. But the people that went solar at the time of it being 1-to-1 are grandfathered in. It's an easy legal argument to make. You made this investment at the time of the 1-to-1 net metering policies, so you should keep that. So in those states that have stepped down from 1-to-1, which again is sending out 1 kilowatt and getting a full kilowatt back, states where it's stepped down from 1-to-1 to 1-to-50, people that went solar at the time of it being 1-to-1 were grandfathered in. So that takes away a lot of worry if anybody still has any. Well, we just covered all of that. Yes, I like the little graphic. Spin your meter backwards. If you have the old school analog meter on your house, when you're making solar power and you're producing more than you're using, it does actually spin backwards. Very satisfying to see. So I pulled up some numbers. When I'm talking to people about solar, they start to realize, all this sounds great, Matthew, and I want to do this, for my home and for the environment. But if the numbers don't work out, it doesn't make any sense. The numbers have to work out because I want to get away from that CMP bill. I want to reduce my costs. And if it's not financially a smart move, well, my wife's not going to let me do it, or my husband's not going to let me do it, or my financial advisor will be mad about me doing it. Well, we have, so I work with Edward Jones in town, and I've been working with 2 individuals there. They refer people to me. Even financial advisors today are looking at solar and seeing that it's a smart investment. When I design a system for someone and I give them a price on it and we talk about costs, I quote everybody a payback period, ROI, a return on investment. The banker inside of me looks at this like a financial investment. And I love doing what I do because it's an awesome financial investment. You're also saving the environment at the same time. So for me, this is a big win-win, helping people save money, but we're also saving the environment at the same time. So these numbers, I did update these yesterday to recent numbers. If you look at average electricity usage, that's quite a big span, 7,500 to 10,000 kilowatt hours per year. But 8,000 kilowatt hours, 9,000 kilowatt hours a year is your average 2-adult household. If you have other family members in there, grandma's in the house, or you have a child, that can be much more. Kids use a lot of electricity, lots of laundry, lots of cooking. So it's really important for my work and what ReVision does. We look very closely at people's electricity bill and try to accurately match your electricity bill to a solar panel size. But those costs right there, those are today's costs, upfront cost of around $30,000. There's your federal tax credit of $9,000, which of course it is a tax credit. Reduces what you're going to pay the Fed, but essentially it's going to be less money in your pocket. And then the cumulative REC income, that's that sunny money, the rewards that you get for going solar. And then you have your net solar investment there. If folks find that to be too much for them or not good for their cash flow situation, there's solar financing today. So a solar loan is an actual solar product with unique stipulations to it. A lot of information to read here, and rates are always changing, so don't try to read all of this, but there are good competitive rates out there. I did a loan for someone just yesterday that was 7.5. Some folks are getting 8, but that's where rates are today. So competitive with your other good rates out there today. If you go and get a home loan or a home equity line of credit, those are around 8 or 9%. So solar loans are a great option for a lot of people. And the banks that ReVision Energy works with, they don't charge you a fee for getting the loan. A lot of banks do like a processing fee or a doc fee, something to make that loan for you. They're getting more than just interest off of you. And the banks that we work with, a couple of different credit unions, they don't charge a doc fee, a processing fee. So you're getting that loan essentially for free, and then you're just paying the principal and interest on it. So a lot of people see that as a great way for them to go solar. Some folks have savings, some folks don't, or some folks just for cash flow purposes like the idea of financing, especially when they find out that it's not a bad loan option at all. Today, often the dollar amount that you pay monthly for the solar loan is very close to what your electricity bill was. So the electricity bill with CMP goes away, and you're instead sending that money towards the loan. And a lot of people understand that. A lot of people just wrap their brain around that and go, this makes a lot of sense to me. Why send $200 a month to CMP when I can be sending $200 towards this loan every month? And eventually, I'll have that loan paid off. Whereas if you just stay with CMP, you're not paying anything off. It's the difference between renting and owning. And I assume a lot of us here may be homeowners, and that's why you're wondering about solar, and you saw it fit to buy instead of rent. Buying solar panels is essentially the same thing. Right now, you're renting electricity from the utility, and it keeps going up and up and up. And it's variable every month. Solar is a way to move away from that. So a lot of the folks that I see and sit down at the kitchen table and have this similar conversation with, it's usually right before retirement or right after, because they're looking for a smart way to fix their expenses. Right now, when you're renting from the utility, it keeps going up, and it's variable, and the future is rather unpredictable. We've all seen what's happened to the electricity bill in the past few years, and people are wondering, what if there's some other event that makes electricity go up again? Well, going solar is a way to move away from that. I'd love to talk a little bit more about the technology now. I'll try not to keep that part too boring. You don't have to be an electrician to understand this stuff. But a major topic today, or something people bring up with me, is, well, Matt, I've been looking at solar for many years and it keeps getting better and better. They say it keeps getting more and more affordable. Well, when's the time to buy it if it keeps getting better and better? So very fair question that I get often. And absolutely, I can talk for hours about, I'm a techie guy and I love following the technology, and it is truly in a great spot. I've been looking at it for a long time myself. 12 years ago when I first bought some panels, they were more expensive than today and not making anywhere near the power that they make today. But there are a couple of really great things about getting a panel today. Most of the panels you've seen and are used to are the blue and silver. That's kind of an old school panel now. A roof-mounted panel is now an all black. So you are seeing a lot of those around town. A lot of people have had those installed in the past couple of years, but as you can see, they look very, very nice to not have that silver border, and be very, very dark solar cells. So they visually sort of blend into the roof. So they look really great. On the right-hand side there, that's a ground mount that I did out in China. And those are still blue and silver. Ground mount panels are making almost 500 watts today. They're bifacial panels, but they are still silver and blue like that, but they still look great. But everybody's favorite detail about the technology and why we're very, very happy with where it is today, we're delivering American-made solar panels. So this is, over our 20 years of work, we've dreamed of this day for a long time. And a lot of Americans have as well. They wanted to go solar a long time, but they didn't want to give money to China, or they didn't want their money to go across seas. They wanted to invest in American manufacturing. So down in Georgia, there is a huge solar plant pumping out Q Cells is the brand name. And Q Cells is a worldwide company, but they now have the largest investment in America, greater than any other group out there. Huge facility making all the ground mount panels and roof mount panels that we're installing today. Georgia's going to become quickly known for more than just peaches. So panels are coming from there. And we're not getting panels from there just because that's it's an American plant. Q Cells is a leader. They've been a leader in solar cell manufacturing worldwide for a very long time. We used Q Cells even before they had this large plant in Georgia. They're a tier 1 solar group. They actually make the most solar cells in the world. But now that they have this large plant down in Georgia, we're very, very happy to be getting panels from there. Okay. So at this point, so we've covered a lot about solar and how it works, the incentives, how the utility works with you, and that you install panels on the roof and it sends power into your home. And we talked a little bit, you saw this graphic already, I believe, that you can be powering a heat pump to heat your home, and a water heater, and a car, and a battery. Certainly don't have to do all of that. But at this point, I want to go back to other technologies that solar opens the door to, and solar groups are doing today. A lot of heat pump groups out there today. Few groups doing heat pumps and solar. But if you're going to put panels on your roof and become your own producer of power, you might as well be heating your home with that electricity as well. Your water heating for the home, you might as well be using electricity for that too. A lot of people say, well, if I'm going to start installing all these electric appliances, won't I need a ton of solar panels and then I'll still have an electricity bill? So another great detail about going solar today and looking into these technologies and getting a heat pump or getting a heat pump water heater, they are incredibly efficient compared to old heat pumps or old electric water heaters. An old electric water heater or traditional electric water heater with elements or coils in it, those can use 4,500 kilowatt hours a year. A heat pump water heater uses 1,000. So while a lot of people may say, yeah, I want solar on my roof to make the electricity bill go away, but I don't want to go crazy and turn everything in my home into electric, because then I might get an electric bill back again. These users of electricity in the home today are incredibly efficient. So some of you may have heat pumps already, and if you got a good, proper, recent install, you are seeing that there's a savings to you versus oil or propane. And it's also doing your AC and air filtering in the home. So for many years, the renewables industry talked about the electric home as something of the future, something that we'll get to one day, something that we're developing these technologies for. Well, it's no longer something of the future. We are there now. So we do a lot of new construction work, and most new construction is getting heat pumps. You get a state incentive to place heat pumps in a home as a retrofit or a new installation. $4,000, $6,000. You can qualify at any income level or moderate or low income level. So heat pumps have great incentives, but folks building new homes today, where there's no more oil going in, thankfully. People are still using propane. That's way more efficient than oil. But what we see today are propane and heat pump homes everywhere, even in northern Maine. A lot of people ask me about the efficiency of a heat pump in the cold of winter. And we had a good test last year. We had a cold snap, as a lot of you remember, here in Maine. And good, proper installs with a well-known heat pump manufacturer and a good installer did just fine in that cold snap. So we are today at the electric home. That's no longer something of the future. And thankfully, from all the federal incentives and state incentives, it is affordable. I didn't mention, and I really should, I should mention Janet Mills is incredibly pro-solar and pro-heat pump. She is getting pretty aggressive with the heat pump incentives. So there's now a whole house heat pump incentive program out there. And I think I already mentioned $4,000, $6,000, or $8,000 for low income folks. That's available for retrofits and new construction. So great incentives today. But have a graphic here. A lot of people say, well, I hear heat pumps make sense and everybody's getting them. My neighbor's getting them, but I went into the store down the road and they had this big ugly thing on the wall. It looked commercial and it's dripping dust out of it. It's ugly. We install Mitsubishis only at ReVision because they look nice. I've put them in many, many beautiful homes, balance them with the decor, put them in a nice spot. They're not ugly like the big commercial ones that you've maybe seen in some buildings around towns. They're smaller. So we only install Mitsubishis because they look great, but they're the most efficient and most reliable unit out there. Mitsubishi has been a fabulous company to work with. We love that they have been very little service or warranty claims on them. And as a group making this often your primary heating source in a home today, that's our chief goal, getting something in your home that needs little maintenance or service. But ReVision is the one and only solar installation group in Maine that has a dedicated service department if you need any work or service. A lot of competition, a lot of other companies out there today, but ReVision is grown in our 20 years, and we are the only fully fledged, mature solar and heat pump group in the state. And we're very proud of our dedicated service team so that if something does stop making heat in the middle of winter, we have local people all across the state that take emergency calls and can get out there and service your heat pump. Solar rarely needs service. Some people ask me if something is needed with solar, what is happening? What does a solar service guy do? First, let me mention, when I go out to a home, I try to warn people if they have trees very close to their home. We're all very, very aware of these growing windstorms becoming a problem. So what can happen in Maine, this is a threat to your roof, whether you have solar or not, but with these recent windstorms, seeing a lot of trees getting knocked down. I've personally seen a pine tree get snapped off halfway up and sail 100 feet across the yard. So if folks have trees too close to their home, on rare occasion, a branch can break off and land on your roof. It's going to hurt your home whether you have solar up there or not, but that is something we see. So I warn people if they have trees too close to their home, and often they know about it if it's present. But yeah, we've seen a lot of trees come down recently. A lot of people ask me, well, so should insurance know that I have solar? Are they going to increase my premium as a result of having solar? And here in Maine, the reason I'm using trees as an example, that's the only damage that we see to solar in Maine, is from a tree that's too close to an array and it breaking off and hitting the array. In other states, they have bad hail. So in states that get lots of hail or tornadoes or hurricanes, and those are truly damaging your roof significantly. And if you get solar in those other states, people do see their premiums increase. But here in Maine, we've yet to see someone's insurance go up as a result of getting solar. The insurance company would just want to know that you have it. You want to tell them that you got it. And they'll just want to know what the cost was, and they cover it and don't increase your premiums. So. Heat pump water heaters. So that's a picture of a very big one. We have a smaller one than that. But these are incredibly popular today. I'm a fan of hybrid water heaters, which do have a heat pump in them. That's actually a picture of a true heat pump only water heater. But a lot of folks today are already getting a hybrid or heat pump water and heater installed. If you're talking to a smart plumber who's up to date on his technologies and how they've changed and how the incentives have changed recently, they are getting heat pump or hybrid water heaters into homes now. What's the difference between a hybrid and a heat pump water heater? Well, hybrid, it does have two technologies in it, but they're both electric. A hybrid water heater has a heat pump built into it. Most of the time you're using that to heat your water. It's ultra efficient, think I mentioned early on that a traditional electric water heater can use 4,500 kilowatt hours a year. Heat pump water heater or hybrid, 1,000. But with a hybrid water heater, you have a heat pump built into it, but you also have the traditional electric elements in it, the traditional coils that your standard, cheaper electric water heater has. And why both of those technologies? Well, the heat pump function in it is incredibly efficient. It's also dehumidifying the air in your basement when it's running, which everybody needs. But it is slow heating of your water. If you drain the whole tank, if you draw a big bath, if you have a bunch of guests over, you may drain that whole tank. And if you do that and you have it on hybrid mode, the elements in the tank can kick on and quickly heat the water back up. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds with electric technology. So plumbers are just out straight installing these today. $850 from the state, just if you show them receipt, and 30% federal tax credit for them as well. So incentives on the state and federal side. And if you're switching off of oil over to a heat pump water heater, just the savings on oil, they'll pay for themselves in a couple of years. If anybody still has an oil water heater in their basement, get that sucker switched out, because that will pay for itself very quickly. So I did say that I love our grid and CMP and connecting to it, backfeeding into the grid. That acts as your battery, and why you don't need a battery, but here's a picture of a battery. And it's a picture of a Tesla battery. Not everybody likes Tesla and Elon Musk, but it is the safest, most reliable battery out there today. And us as a group putting these into people's homes, safety and reliability is paramount with a battery. But why are people getting batteries today if the grid is your battery? Well, the grid drops every once in a while. If you're in downtown Belfast here, and if you're on the hospital grid, you're very, very lucky. We rarely lose it, and if we lose it, it's for a short period of time, but a lot of Belfast is outside of that. Or a lot of us in Maine are in the country, and what we love about Maine, and we lose the grid often here. And we've seen a lot of that recently. A lot of people have decided to start looking into solar because of these growing windstorms, and they're tired of being reliant on a lineman coming out and reestablishing their connection, and they're tired of CMP and whatever reliability they've experienced in the past with them. Getting a battery in your home gives you storage for when the grid does go out. And today, this is a beautiful change in technology, because you get a 30% tax credit for the battery. And essentially, these are going to start replacing, they already are, standby generators. Standby generator does not get a tax credit, of course. It uses propane. How long it will last is based upon the bottle size, and you're relying on a propane guy making it down your road to deliver more propane if you are running that generator. So I'm seeing a lot of people, we're having a lot of calls recently that they're sick of either the pull start generator, or before Christmas, they lost power for 4 days or 6 days. And I go out to MDI, I go down east often, and there were places that their road was blocked for days. A lot of pine trees came down, a lot of pine and spruces keep blowing down along the coast from these windstorms, and it makes a road impassable. Propane truck can't get down. You might not be able to get out. So a battery is a great solution to self-reliance, moving away from a gas guzzling generator. But it's going to store the electricity that you produce on your roof. You'll still backfeed excess electricity into the grid and earn those credits. But you're also keeping some storage on site. And some homes, I design a system for them, and we talk about how long they can go. Most people are making a plan with me to be able to run for a day, maybe 2 days off of a battery, because that's what most outages are, or less. The 3 to 6 day outage, that's a rare event that a lot of us can count on one hand in recent memory in the past 20, 30 years that happened. But I do have some folks that want a system for that long-term outage, want solar for self-reliance, and are preparing for a greater windstorm or catastrophe, and they want the reliability on a system that recharges. And they can possibly go 4 or 5 days, depending upon how many batteries they make. Because when the sun comes out the next day after the storm, it's going to be recharging the battery. So what I talk about with a lot of folks here in Maine, we have a saying, if you don't like the weather, just wait a minute. I believe it's because we're in the jet stream and weather comes, it hits us hard, but then it blows away quickly. So wait a minute and the weather changes. So we get the storms. We're getting a lot less snow, but we still get storms, but it blows away. And the next day the sun comes out. And even though the grid may still be down, you're making solar power and you're sending it into that battery. So you're recharging that battery as soon as the sun comes out. Some folks, if I've designed a system to just send power to vital loads in their home, and we're getting good sun, they could possibly run a pretty long time on a battery due to that sun coming back out and recharging the next day, especially if they're heating with maybe a wood stove to help out. So great technology today. I know a lot of people don't like Elon, but he's not very involved with batteries. But we install the Tesla Powerwall because they've been on the West Coast for 10 years, and they've had an incredible track record. So we were picked by Tesla to be the first in New England here on the East Coast to install the Powerwall 5 years ago, and we love them. We love them because we don't get any calls from clients saying, hey, this thing needs service, or hey, this thing's making a funny sound, or it's not doing what it's supposed to. They've been just incredibly reliable. So for something going into your home that's going to perhaps power vital loads, it's very smart to go with the most reliable, safest product out there. Can't talk solar without all the EVs that we're seeing pop up all over the place and all the chargers going in. This is just an example picture of a Chevy Bolt. Yes, they had some troubles early on. I think they've worked those out. But today, what I do when I go into someone's home is ask them if they're thinking about EVs, and we can incorporate some solar panels into their project. And I can calculate, for the panels going on that individual's roof, how many more do we need to add so that they can go X amount of miles with their car. I myself have a plug-in hybrid, a Prius Prime. You can go about 20 miles on that battery. And if I wasn't driving 300 miles a week for work and going and seeing homeowners and having this same conversation, if I was just driving into Belfast from Belmont or Morrill or Searsport, if I had a shorter commute, that 20-mile battery would be perfect. And it's been a game changer for me since I got this car. It's made me go, maybe I don't need a full EV, maybe a plug-in hybrid is the way to go. So a lot of people are thinking about an EV or a hybrid in their near future. Definitely opt for either an EV or a plug-in hybrid that you can do some charging with. A lot of the pre-I out there on the road, a lot of hybrids you can't plug in, but most new ones you can. And it really opens the door and makes you feel like you have an EV when you can just, I hop in my Prius, just hit a button to tell it if I want it to use 100% battery, or I hit a button to tell it if I want it to be a hybrid. So really impressive technology that has come so far. So we're all seeing lots of arrays like that pop up. You can't see that from the road. You're just driving by and seeing the ends of those panels, and they typically go far back into a field. A lot of mixed opinions that we hear today on all these farms going in, and it's alarming, honestly. I drive a lot, drove through Augusta today, drove through Augusta and Waterville, and it's alarming. All the arrays going in around the traffic clovers, just everywhere. Some people, if you're turning to the internet for facts, there's some myths out there and some folks with some strange opinions. So that's why we're talking today. We'll have a Q&A session at the end here. But you know, what's great about these farms going in is that it is local electricity. They send power into the local substation, the closest substation to the array. This is a farm that we built out on a farmer's land. A lot of people will talk about opinions of putting panels on farmland, but that farmer has the right to choose what to do with his land. And he, like a lot of farmers, were struggling to get by just doing hay or corn or potatoes to just cover the bill. And when they decide to lease their land, not sell it, it's not a permanent structure, it's fixed to a 25-year lease, that farmer can retire, his family can retire. And that land does not get ruined. It can all be returned to farmland. There's no PFAS in the panels that we install. PFAS is typically in flexible solar panels that have a lot of plastics in them. But the panels that we're installing, I don't actually know of any panel out there that has PFAS in it aside from the flexible ones. So a rigid ground panel, it's glass and aluminum. I'm sure there's maybe some bad cheap ones out there somewhere that might, but we're not installing them, and pretty sure other groups like NextAmp or Arcadia are not as well. But most of the farms that you're seeing pop up all over the state are either a group like NextAmp, you've all probably seen the marketing from them, or Arcadia, trying to get you to sign up and get 10% or 15% off of your bill. It is a great model. But people want to do more than save just 10 or 15%. And so that's why we have an ownership model of solar. So NextAmp, that you've seen in the mail, in the paper, on the TV, that's a subscription-based community solar farm. And like I said, you can only save, I think, the 15%. I haven't seen that in a while. They seem to be down to only 10. Again, great model, but people want to save more than the 10 to 15%. It is a lot of people making a small difference to themselves, but on the large scale, it's a significant difference environmentally. So it's a good thing to see. But a lot of people want to do more. So we have an ownership model where you can, instead of buying 20 panels to go on your roof, you can buy them in a farm a couple of towns over. In that farm, like the earlier one pictured, electricity is just being fed into a CMP meter. CMP knows how much electricity is being generated there. And if you have purchased 20 panels worth of power in that farm, you're going to get that portion assigned to your meter. But if you have a good solar roof or good space on your land to build an array, that's going to be your best path forward. But we see a lot of people today that maybe are downtown and they don't have a good roof for solar, or they don't have any land to build a ground array, or maybe they rent. Community solar farms are a great option for them. A lot of people get either very excited about it, or maybe they're already passionate about roof solar, or maybe they're on the fence and I'll help them fall one way or the other. There's some great options or great details to a community solar farm. And one that a lot of people love is that, not everybody knows if they're going to stay in their home for X amount of years. If you move to a different meter, a different home in CMP territory, your share in the solar farm follows you. So that's why it's great for renters or someone who's not sure if they're going to stay in the home that they're in for X amount of years. The solar farm can go with them to another meter. Just has to be in CMP territory. It's a transferable asset. So I have a friend that got the solar farm share and decided to move back to Florida. He sold it to someone else in CMP that essentially needed more electricity. So that's another awesome way to manage it. Last thing I'll mention about community solar farms, the ownership model that we do, two more things. One, you get the federal tax credit, which is huge. Again, that 30% federal tax credit. So that's awesome and makes it affordable. The last thing to mention, these are in very high demand because there's a lot of people that don't have that ideal solar roof, or they don't have space to build their own land, their own array on the land, or maybe they know in 5 years they want to replace their roof. There's some people that have already looked into solar and they don't think it's a good option for them. And if I go out and talk to them and I don't think it's a good option, the community solar farm is awesome, but very high demand. So folks are waiting sometimes a year and a half to be able to join the farm. There's only so many electricians out there. We're building a lot of them now, ReVision. And we kind of pioneered them in Maine 15 years ago. And we're now trying to do 2 a year, but they sell out very quickly. A lot of people sign up for them and reserve a share in the farm before it starts being built. All of them have sold out before we break ground. Very high demand for those. So when I start talking about that, I got to mention that to people because often they feel like that's the good option for them, and I'll help them figure out if that's the best option, but it's important to know there's a wait period for that. But that covers the details that I'd like to cover today. But we'll now cover some questions. When I go out to homes and have this conversation, I can sometimes I'm in the home for an hour talking about solar or other technologies, sometimes 3 hours. There's a lot to chat about. This is night 1 of 4 total. We're trying to cover the basics today, but these are some good topics here. that may trigger some questions for you, but I think some people have a burning question right off the bat. If you want to go.
About waiting to get to the community farm. What is the wait for getting an installation in your home?
Right now, when someone says yes to a solar project, we're installing in fall.
Okay, so about 6 months.
Yep.
And how long does it install take on a typical 4-bedroom?
4-bedroom house. The actual installation, so guys out there on your roof, depends upon where you're located. I'm guessing you're somewhere close here to Belfast, so maybe 3 days. Yep, that. Yep. Yep. Yep, our work's not done until we flip that switch and you're making power. Yeah.
I've talked to friends who have installed solar in states other than Maine, and they told me that coordinating process with the local utility is a pain in the neck.
Yeah.
Still takes a long time to come out and do whatever they gotta do.
Mm-hmm.
Inspection, approval for the solar system at somebody's house to start sending current into the grid, things like that. Anyway, it's a long way of getting to the question, which is, what does that process look like in Maine, and how long does it typically take?
Yeah, so I had put a topic in my slides there of the state being pro-solar and CMP being pro-solar, because at least working with ReVision, it's headache-free. So that's a common topic that comes up. If I would put money, if someone is from out of state, they moved here and they said, hey, Matthew, I'm from California or Texas or Florida, and I went solar there, or I tried to go solar there, but it became a mess. The contractor putting the panels on the roof didn't work with the electrician, and the electrician didn't know what the town wanted, and they were surprised by this permit. They installed it, but then they didn't turn it on. It's kind of, honestly, in a lot of other states, it's kind of a mess. And so ReVision's goal is, we have a saying of doing solar right. We only do, so some in other states, one of the big problems is our groups that will want to lease your roof to a utility. That's a mess, honestly. And here in Maine and with ReVision, we believe in doing solar right, is a saying that we have. So we only do an ownership model. And we've been doing this work in Maine for 20 years. I have almost 16,000 installations out there. I have a database. We have a database of every town in Maine, who their code enforcement officer is, what their phone number is, the last time we talked to them, and where they're at with their specific ordinances. And they know us and we know them. So it's pretty much headache-free. And being a fully fledged solar company, we have an administrative and back shop team that has done this thousands of times before and knows exactly what to expect. But things are changing all the time. Daily, in my world, things are changing. Towns come up with new codes, and we're right there on top of it because we're a larger group that knows how to handle this and has been doing it for 20 years. So yeah, all the time I hear about headaches in other states. And so a top piece of feedback that I get after someone has received a solar installation from us, whether they're from another state or experienced solar or not, they say, this is fabulous, Matthew. This has been great. We paid you, we signed documents, and you took care of everything else. We didn't have to do anything but pay you. You took care of everything else. Thank you so much. It was headache-free. So great question. Great. I hear that often. Yeah.
Slides with showing costs, 30,000 minus the credits, down to about 18. Talk about ROI, but you didn't really give a typical ROI in the project.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing today, is around 8-year payback period. It's highly dependent on your situation and what your electricity bill is, but 8-year payback period for a rooftop solar installation. And that's why a lot of people are doing it today. So years ago, just 10 years ago, a payback period was 15 years or 20 years. Cost of solar was much higher. There's a common saying in the industry, solar costs have come down 75% over the past 10 years. Payback periods used to be double what they are now, but with the significant rise in electricity rates, that has dropped the payback period, because that's what you're getting rid of, is that inflating bill, but you're also getting that 30% federal tax credit. We haven't always had that. In the past, it's been either less or we've been at risk of losing that. But the Inflation Reduction Act gives us that 30% federal tax credit for 9 years now. And a lot of people ask me, again, the Inflation Reduction Act is policy, it's spending, government spending. What if somebody else comes in and wants to take that away? Well, like I said, solar is less of a political issue today. Both sides of the aisle are saving a ton of money with solar, so we're not going to lose that.
We get high winds and the winds are getting higher with climate change. What's the concern of the wind ripping the solar panels off the roof?
So forever, we have done engineering for a hurricane rated system, 105, 110 mile an hour wind ratings on our system. We use a racking system that secures panels to the roof. That's the same racking system used across the country in places that do get hurricanes and tornadoes. I think the recent windstorms, we saw 60 mile an hour winds. I'm sure some places got some microbursts that were maybe more, but we do the most secure racking out there, hurricane rated systems. And the only time I've seen is just once that I've seen solar come off the roof. It's because the roof was not properly built. They didn't have hurricane ties on the roof to secure the roof to the rest of it. So the roof came off. All the solar actually stayed on, but it wasn't a properly built. Thankfully, it was a garage or a shed. But yeah, great question. The windstorms, that's what we're seeing for a climate change in Maine is these. I mean, I live downtown here too, and I've picked up a shovel, like 6 times this year? It's ridiculous. But we're getting more windstorms, and so that's a growing concern. So we've always seen fit to do a hurricane rated system. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Great question. Thank you. So I had mentioned earlier that the technology is constantly changing and getting better, and people ask me, is now the time? Like, I've heard of these solar shingles. I think I only gave one reason for why it's great now, but on that side of that, to dive further into that technology. So Tesla has a solar shingle. Doesn't seem to be going well, honestly. It clearly looks like the rigid panels on your roof, that classic style panel, is absolutely the smartest way to go. What we foresee in the future is perhaps a larger panel, perhaps made in a factory and to fit like a plain roof. But no, the individual panels and not the solar shingles are clearly the way to go. So on the West Coast, they've been doing the solar shingles for a while, and I haven't seen any in Maine. But Yeah, I think it'll be an option around for a while probably, but it's clear that your standard panel is the way to go. A roof panel, that technology, the wattage slowly rises over time, and that will continue. It's pretty darn efficient. I don't see how they can squeeze any more efficiency out of them. They're extremely efficient. But one leap forward in technology that happened recently is with ground mount panels. And folks are seeing this as they drive around. The backside of a ground mount panel is no longer whited out. You can actually see solar cells on the backside of a ground mount panel. And this is so reflective light off the ground can be absorbed into the backside of the array. Instead of whiting out the backside, it's exposed. And so there's a fair amount of light reflected up to the backside of the array. And what do we have on the ground in Maine? Sometimes during the winter, white snow reflecting lots of light. You have to wear sunglasses if it's a sunny day during the winter. So that's been a leap forward. But today, so the wattage on a roof mount panel is up to 410 watts. That's huge. That's a lot of power. It hasn't grown much in the footprint, but yeah, a lot of people are just happy to know that it's very efficient, 25-year warranty, American made, over 400 watts now.
Well, seeing as it's almost 8 o'clock, I think that if there's one more question, yep, we got one more.
The state average, I think, is 285 a watt. So why different?
For price per watt, you would factor in the tax credit. No?
Some like state websites and stuff.
So your question is why on the internet does it look less expensive? So I've had this conversation a number of times, and it's a very fair question. And there's a lot of answers here, but there's two things at play that I see the most. And a lot of people have your concern and they haven't gone solar yet because of it. They do research and they're seeing this should cost less. I got a quote and it costs way more. What gives? So I had mentioned that in other states, solar works very differently. It's kind of a mess. There's a lot of groups looking to lease your roof and nationwide, but we're not experiencing it locally. There's been a downturn in people going solar. I think it's just kind of, when we got these higher incentives recently, there was a lot of excitement. Now the excitement's died down a little bit. And so there's a lot of groups from other states that put information on the internet to get your interest. Yep. Yeah, I've had people call me and say the same thing. And I've looked into that, and it's not a straight website. I'd be happy to investigate that more. But so there are groups that are earning money just for finding interest. So they're creating websites on the internet saying you can get solar at this cost.
So it seems to me all of the installers in Maine in this area are very high. So
When did she get the installation done? Yeah. Yeah.
things generally cost more.
So I mentioned I wanted to cover two things. One was that there are groups on the internet that are getting paid to sell interest that they get. The other change that has happened in the past 2 years is that we have adopted new electrical codes in the state. And now there are twice as many electricians required on a job site than before. But I can tell you that I do sell solar projects for that price. I have done many installations at that cost. So when we're talking about averages and ballparks, what I put up there was a fair ballpark. But I see people and they can get solar for less than what you're mentioning. And sometimes it's more, depending upon complications. Yeah.
They're investing in you. They've been in business for 20 years. They pay a livable wage. You're employed very well. They're going to be here. It seems to me that they're going to be here for a pretty long time. Versus, and this gentleman's point, I think it's well taken, that you can have solar installed much cheaper. But I think that it's important to point out that when you do purchase solar, you're making an investment. You're making an investment in your community, and personally, if I were to do it, I would want to hire a company that has the interest of the community at heart. And I feel like ReVision entity is that.
Yeah, there's.
And that would be the lowest if you made that quote, because it just seems to be this area, the quotes are very high. And the closer the company is to Belfast, the higher the quotes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matt, we need to end because it's 8 o'clock.
Yep.
It's after 8. So one more comment from you, and then we'll just, you can have conversations in the back. Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that there are a lot of young, new, smaller installers out there that are doing some very low cost installs. What we see in the long term is an increase in long-term costs when that is done. ReVision doesn't want you to have a super low upfront costs and then more fees and costs and service and maintenance later down the road, because that eats into the value of your system. So while it does look like there are some installations that could appear expensive, in those cases, it's often so that issues are avoided later down the road, and costs are not going up for you with maintenance and service.
Thank you so much. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.